Welcome to Instant Deck Techs. The aim of this series is to give you a short, concise guide on how to build a certain deck. It won't cover every card, but we'll go through all the categories and go over the types of cards needed to make the deck work. Any card mentioned will be down in the description below. Imoti, Celebrant of Bounty, is 3 green-blue for a 3/1 legendary creature, Naga Druid. It has Cascade, and spells you cast with converted mana cost 6 or greater have Cascade. The aim of this deck is to ramp as quickly as possible, so that we can start casting spells with 6 CMC or higher, so that we can continue to cheat things out of our deck and amass an overwhelming board state. This deck will run a lot more high drops than normal decks. In our categories, we'll generally be splitting them between low drop spells and high drop spells that will trigger off Imoti. Imoti is a great deck for anyone starting out in Commander or working on a budget, but then it also has a lot of ways of upgrading, so the main deck will be focusing on a more budget build, but then we'll add some higher cost upgrades towards the end. The first section of the deck is the ramp. We want to be hitting 6 drops as quickly as possible, so we'll be running more ramp than a normal deck. I'd want to run between 10 and 16 bits of ramp. The aim of this is so that we get to a point where we can play at least 2 large spells a turn. At least 8 of these bits of ramp I would make sure are 3 CMC and under so we can play them nice and early. On the remaining bits of ramp, you can go a bit higher on the CMC. The reason for this is that they will still be impactful if we hit them off a cascade trigger later in the game, and if they're larger than 6 CMC, then they will cascade with our commander themselves. For the card draw, I would recommend first running effects that trigger on creatures coming into play. As we're playing a lot of high drop creatures, we can also run effects that draw us cards on large creatures that come into play, or spells that care about a creature's power. In addition to these, we'll want to run some card draw on some large spells, so that we get additional value from them. These can either be on X spells, which we can dump all our mana into, or on big creatures that we can use to swing through. In total, you want at least 8 bits of card draw, but you can run more if they're on large creatures, as they will also serve as a win condition. And with all the ramp we're running, Ayisi and Tetiova will also do a great job of drawing us cards, and make sure our ramp benefits us in additional ways. For our interaction, I would recommend half be on low drop instants that we can reliably cast throughout the game, and the other half will be on big dumb creatures, as later in the game these can always be turned sideways for the win. I personally would recommend 4 of each, but you can run more creatures if you want to. Imoti will do a great job of getting us value from our large spells, but we want to run some additional effects that cheat things into play, so we can get additional value. I personally quite like Kodama and Rashmi in these slots. While Wild Pair won't trigger on the cards we cascade, it's still great at bringing creatures out of our deck. There are also some other cards with Cascade that we can run. The ones with 6 CMC or above will still trigger Cascade on Imoti, so you can cascade multiple times per turn. An additional way we can get the most out of our deck is by playing creatures or spells that have built-in cost reduction. The CMC of these spells won't change, but the amount of mana that we need to cast them does. Spells like these really help us do multiple things per turn. This is where I would focus a lot of your high drop spells. We can also run some cards that fix the top of our deck. Having control of what we're going to cascade into is what will push this deck into something extremely powerful. It adds consistency to the randomness of Cascade. If however you like the randomness that Cascade can bring, just don't run these cards. You can fill out any remaining slots in this deck with your favourite big creatures. This is really where you can make the deck your own. So run your favourite blue-green cards here. As we're a 2-colour deck, we can run a decent amount of utility lands. Look for things to boost sections of the deck where it is lacking. Things such as Graveyard Hate or giving some of our creatures flash, or look for things like Moss Swap Bridge to help cheat more things into play. When it comes to upgrades, you're basically looking for things to increase the power level or increase the consistency of the deck. The cards I've listed below would be a great place to start. But again, this isn't a deck that needs the most expensive cards to work. Run the best cards that you have that fit into the categories that we've mentioned. This video was a request from a viewer. The next couple of deck techs you will see will also be from requests in the comments. If you have a deck you'd like to see, please let us know. If you like the look of those, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.